Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a question that, honestly, hits pretty close to home for a lot of us. We're talking about how to bridge that frustrating gap between just knowing the facts of our faith and actually experiencing a vibrant daily relationship with God. If your spiritual life has ever felt like, just another checklist, you are definitely in the right place. So let's start with a really common struggle, and it's one we don't always like to admit out loud. Why does it feel like we can have all this head knowledge? Like we know the Bible stories, we totally understand the theology, but our daily walk still feels completely dry. Why do so many of us know about God, but struggle to actually experience a close, conscious relationship with Him?
Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is just the sheer chaos of our modern world. I mean, think about it. It is so incredibly easy to let our endless schedules, the constant social media scrolling, and heavy work stress completely crowd out any quiet connection with our Creator. We end up treating church like a consumer product, right? Or a social club. And the result? This overwhelming spiritual dryness. We're essentially running on empty, trying to sustain our souls on fast food spirituality. But here's what's actually kind of fascinating. This is not just a 21st century problem. Decades before smartphones and the 24-hour news cycle even existed, a really perceptive pastor named A.W. Tozer noticed this exact same spiritual starvation. He summed it up perfectly, saying, "The hungry sheep look up and are not fed." He was looking out at congregations filled with people doing everything right, but who were internally starving for a real, breathing connection with the divine.
So, to address this deep hunger, Tozer wrote what would become an absolute classic, The Pursuit of God. It was originally published back in 1948, and he wrote it as a lifeline for ordinary Christians who were just tired of superficial, program-driven religion and were thirsting for something real. He wasn't writing for seminary students in an ivory tower. He was writing for the everyday person sitting in the pew, wondering why their faith felt so mechanical.
And what's really cool is the story of the man himself. Tozer wasn't some lofty, out-of-touch academic born into privilege. He was an ordinary guy from a poor farming family who found his faith after hearing a street preacher in Akron, Ohio. He was totally self-taught, no formal theological education at all. And the story goes that he drafted much of this deep, beautiful masterpiece, literally on his knees, during an overnight train journey to Texas. He wrote this from a place of deep personal practice, not just theory.
Okay, moving on to section 1, knowledge versus experience, head versus heart. Tozer sets up this really stark comparison. On one hand, we have what he calls orthodoxy, or just head knowledge, having the right opinions. Tozer actually warned that the evangelicalism of his day had laid the altar and divided the sacrifice perfectly, but there was absolutely no sign of fire. We can hold perfectly correct doctrines, but if we treat God as just a mere principle, we're going to be left feeling empty. The alternative on the right side here is actually experiencing His presence. It's a close, daily relationship, a conscious fellowship that brings an inward sweetness to your everyday life. Now, you might be thinking, okay, how do I bridge this gap? Do I just need to try harder? No way. Absolutely not. Tozer writes, "We pursue God because, and only because, He has first put an urge within us that spurs us to the pursuit." I love that. That is the beautiful grace in Tozer's message. Spiritual growth isn't about exhausting yourself to earn salvation or achieve some impossible perfection. It's simply responding to the God who is already actively drawing you in. That hunger you feel, He put it there. He emphatically reminds us that God is a living person, a loving personality. Think about what that actually means. God can be known with the exact same intimacy and immediacy as any other person in your everyday life. You don't interact with your best friend or your spouse as a theological concept, right? You interact with them as a person, and Tozer is calling us to do the exact same thing with our Creator. All right, part 2, the joy of surrender, removing the veil. So, if God is already pursuing us, what's the obstacle blocking the way? Well, Tozer argues it's us. He calls it the opaque veil of self. Removing this veil means surrender. It's giving up our exhausting need for control and our stubborn self-will. Now, Tozer uses some pretty intense language, like the annihilation of self-will. But at its core, this is really a warm, simple invitation. It's an invitation to stop trying to micromanage the universe, to lay down our busy, self-centered agendas, and finally make room for God's gentle presence to enter our daily experience. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Whenever we talk about deep ideas like surrender or inward transformation, we absolutely have to ground it in reality. We have to ask this central question: what difference does this actually make when my alarm goes off tomorrow morning? If I embrace this, how does my regular old Tuesday look any different? Well, here is the difference it makes tomorrow morning. Your daily commute, that totally stressful team meeting, the pure chaos of getting the kids to school, it transforms. You move from a feeling of isolated desolation to a quiet inward joy. You actually start acknowledging his presence right in the middle of the hustle. Instead of just adding another outward religious habit, like frantically skimming a devotional for 3 minutes before rushing out the door, this is an inward transformation. It's finding a deep peace that kind of hovers over your daily turmoil because you realize you're in an ongoing, quiet conversation with a God who is right there with you. Section 3, tomorrow morning, living it out. Let's get really practical. Try these 3 simple steps tomorrow. First, carve out just 5 minutes of total silence. No phone, no podcasts, no talking. Just wait on God, allowing yourself to feel that urge he put inside you. Second, practice consciously acknowledging God's presence while doing ordinary things, washing the dishes, answering emails, sitting in traffic. Just a simple, I know you're here, Lord. And third, identify one specific stressful situation you are trying to micromanage and consciously surrender control of it over to him. And as you do these things, keep this really powerful thought from Tozer in your back pocket. The Bible is not an end in itself, but a means to bring men to an intimate and satisfying knowledge of God. That is huge. All our reading, our church attendance, our small groups, they aren't the final goal. They are simply the beautiful doorways meant to lead us into knowing, experiencing, and deeply loving our Creator. We can't just stop at the doorway. We have to walk into the room. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to carry into your week. Are you ready to stop just knowing the facts about God and start actively pursuing a relationship with him? Because remember, he is already pursuing you. Let tomorrow morning be the start of that beautiful pursuit. Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and we'll catch you in the next one.